Hello and welcome to Made It in the States, the #1 resource for finding and supporting American-made products. My name is Ben Newman and I'm your host. We will be telling the stories of companies producing products here domestically. We truly believe that there is a knowledge gap issue. There are plenty of companies that are producing products right here in America. However, it is too challenging for the everyday consumer to find and support those businesses. We are here to change that. Every week, we will be talking to a new owner or CEO and learning about their story, their struggles, their triumphs, and why they are continuing to produce products right here in the United States. We are so incredibly excited to have you along for this journey. If you enjoy the podcast, please like and subscribe, as well as leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. On today's podcast, we are talking to Chris Bevolo of Bevolo Lighting, a fourth-generation lighting company based out of the French Quarter in New Orleans. We are going to learn about how, over the past 4 generations, Bevolo Lighting has become the industry leader in gas and electric custom copper light fixtures. We're also going to learn about how Chris and the Bevolo Lighting team are developing a workforce not only for today, but for the future. Let's jump in and talk to Chris and learn about the Bevolo Lighting story. On today's podcast, we are joined by Chris Bevolo of Bevolo Lighting. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Ben, thanks for having me.
Give people an understanding of what you guys do. What do you make? And we'll show some pictures on the screen as you talk.
Okay, cool. Well, we actually hand make copper light fixtures, right? Which is, they're all made in Louisiana, right? And the reason why it matters is because we actually sell gas lighting as well as electric lighting. Most light fixtures, just for a quick understanding of how light fixtures are made, are typically either, soldered together or cast, right? And what happens is whenever you put fire inside of those things, they fall apart. And so riveting, which is the technique used to build like planes or boats or things like that, it actually can expand and contract. And of course, copper being a very durable metal, and one that transfers heat well is what historically gas lights were made out of. They just weren't historically riveted together. And so kind of getting into that, probably the easiest place to start about our company is history, which is not normally the best place to start, but it makes sense in this format. But my great grandfather, was an Italian immigrant, came over to the States and was young, teenager when he actually had to lie about his age to get a job at Ford, working on the assembly line, and it was just to help provide for the family, like a lot of young men did at the time. He worked there for a number of years and then ended up moving out to Connecticut and working for Igor Sikorsky. Sikorsky being another just very important manufacturing company in the history of the U.S. And then eventually moved down to work for Andrew Higgins. So during World War II, when they were building all the boats out of New Orleans, he ended up down here and worked there until the war ended. So 1945, we won, turns out, and we didn't need a ton of boats. So pretty much everybody got laid off, right? Because there was no more. The demand was so high, and then it went to zero. And so he at the time was a little bit older, and he had a crew of guys that worked under him while he was at Higgins, and they started just a Bevolo Metal Crafts at the time. And so they would do. They took the techniques that they knew and had learned through the years, which was riveting things together to build stuff, and applied it to really a lot of things. I mean, there was going back and looking at some like old ads and pictures and things. They made medical equipment, like dental equipment, and just weird, random stuff that doesn't make any sense. Obviously, did a lot of like the plating and polishing and things like that. They leveled houses, which, how does that fit into this equation? Don't know. I think they were basically the kind of guys that were like, you have money, we'll do whatever.
Exactly.
And so, a lot of stuff, a lot of lanterns specifically had been damaged or poles knocked down and things during the war. And a lot of those soldiers would bring them back to the U.S. As just like little artifacts or whatever. And in order to repair them, you can't repair a soldered joint, right? When you're soldering two pieces of metal together, they need to be clean, etc. And so they would rivet those back together, and so they got into like repairing light fixtures, and then eventually, hey, we could this one's not repairable. Let's make one that looks like that so that you can have what you're asking for, and then really the biggest probably catalyst of becoming a lighting company was a guy named Hayes Town, he's the Frank Lloyd Wright of Louisiana, right? He's the reason Louisiana architecture looks the way it does. He was just walking down the street of the French Quarter and actually heard hammering and stuck his head in the door and was like, "Hey, if can you make a light fixture?" And the Bevolo legend goes that he said, "If you can draw it, I can build it." And then that night they actually made the first two lights that are now called the French Quarter lantern. Um,
Very cool.
and so those that specific style, that's the one that's on my business card. It's on our logo. That light is in over 50 countries, all 50 states, and we ship it all around the world. But that style is very architecturally diverse. It can be used in a lot of different styles of homes and houses. And anyhow, but going back to the riveting, which is sorry, I got off point there. But going back to riveting, the riveting was how we built those light fixtures. And so those fixtures that we did build in the 50s and 60s and stuff that you'll see all around, but like in the French Quarter, for example, there's lights that have been burning continuously for 70 plus years.
Wow.
And when Katrina came in, they cut the gas off to the city for obvious reasons, just safety reasons. And that was some of those lights is the first time they had ever like literally ever been turned off, was because they didn't have gas flow. So there's a light in between a couple of our stores. When I walk from one location to the other that you pass up that we have no records of anything, but just looking at it, it was probably mid 50s
Wow.
when it was built, and it's just up and burning, and it still works and it still serves its purpose. And it's cool. It's cool that hand riveting technique coupled with using copper, American copper specifically, is what allows you to make an actual lifetime product and not a lifetime product.
Mhm.
Um, so that's a very long-winded answer to what do we do?
Yeah, well, I think it's incredibly interesting, and I want to dive more into the lighting industry and kind of what you make to help people understand more. But I want to focus real quick on the history of the business. So, you talked about your grandfather started Bevolo Metalworks, kind of just was the guy who would do anything for some money. If you had
Yeah.
some money, he would do it. Sounds like a very entrepreneurial, get your hands dirty type of guy.
Hmm.
Uh, right up my alley for sure. What was the transition? When did it start? It sounds like the interaction with this famous Louisiana architect kind of was maybe the catalyst to say, okay, here's where we can really find our niche and niche down and just get really good at this one thing. Can you walk us through kind of the history of how Bevelo Metalworks has gone from there? If your father or your parents were involved, and then kind of how you
Sure.
transitioned into the business. Were you always wanting to be a part of Bevelo Metalworks, or was it kind of the classic family business? I don't know about that.
So it was okay. So I'll answer that. My great grandfather was generation one, right? And like I said, he was kind of older. So 80 years to have four generations is kind of quick, but he was older when he got started. My
Yeah.
great uncle, Uncle Jimmy, who took the company over after him, basically the company just kind of continued to get like just it got older, but it got kind of smaller because in the 70s and 80s, the building in the world was becoming more like plastic, right?
Yeah.
Everything was fake, everything was quick, everything was cheap, and we were going through that whole like linoleum
Mhm.
part of the universe. And so that's just asterisk. That's where Haystown honestly really made his mark. The architect we were talking about earlier, because he only believed in real materials and resource materials and repurposed materials. Anyhow, he's a super super interesting. If you're an architecture nerd, super interesting figure and very important in that residential architecture world. Anyhow, so Uncle Jimmy had the company, but it was like the demand for real stuff was going down.
Mhm.
And so as a kid, I was born in '83. Um, as a kid, we did the company wasn't like, hey, it's this big deal. It was like Uncle Jimmy, and he had like a part-time guy that worked for him, and he would sell the lights. He'd go upstairs and build the lights. He'd call them when they were ready, and
Yeah.
if he got real busy, the part-time guy would come and help him get some lights out the door a little faster, and he'd keep up, and he, he was wonderful in keeping the flame alive. No pun intended. And then he actually called my dad, and my dad also had that kind of hustler mentality. He did everything from like used car sales to stockbroker to like you name it. Like he was again just trying to hustle and had dabbled around in some marketing stuff. And so uh, Uncle Jimmy got my dad to come down and help him with a brochure, right? And so as he was down there working with it, my dad was like, Jimmy, why don't you bring me on board and let me try to see if I can grow this thing a little bit. And we don't have enough business. I can't afford it, blah blah blah. And then he ended up hiring him, part time kind of thing. And then my dad, had to learn how to make lights, at the time. And this is when I was so how it relates to me. I was 10 years old, 8, 9, 10 years old. And my dad was just kind of like learning about lighting. So I didn't really know. I knew I had been to Uncle Jimmy's shop, but like I didn't really know anything about the business.
Yeah.
And then my dad worked for a little while and learned how to build lights and stuff. And then he asked Jimmy if he could try selling to the next guy that walked in. And my dad is a brilliant salesperson. Now he's elite and I'm saying that like worldwide. Like he's top tier marketing and sales brain. And so it really caught fire almost immediately after my dad got involved in the sales and marketing side of things. And so then the company grew super fast. And my dad jokes about his first business plan was to kind of do the old school way of doing things, set up distribution channels, but it was like whatever's a round trip $99 Southwest flight was like the cities that we went to. So if you look like still today, Birmingham,
Yeah.
Atlanta, Jackson, like those cities are the ones that we grew in. Houston, Dallas, like we have a ton of business in those cities, and we kind of set up our structure there. And so the company grew pretty quickly, but we had this brilliant marketing mind. My uncle was a great uncle, but Uncle Jimmy was a great craftsman. Um, so it grew fast and higher, 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 higher. And then, I got brought in, and at the time, I think there was about 35, 40 employees, but we were like 18-week lead time. We had
Oh,
had
wow.
some mismanagement of some people that did some untrustworthy stuff, and that we don't need to get into that. But I basically came in, and my dad just needed somebody that he could trust. And so as a 22-year-old, I had to kind of take over. At the time, it was like the sales side of things
Okay.
and the production side of things. And my dad was handling the marketing and the legal side of things because, like I said, there was some stuff going on. And
Yeah.
so we really had to strap in. But at that time, we had a bunch of people that were really, really good human beings that were very loyal to my dad. And basically, everybody just grabbed the rope and pulled until we got out of that situation where we were just underwater. And so we had great customers who were really, really understanding of the situation. We also were going through Katrina, so I mean, there was just like it was chaos for a minute. But
Yeah.
again, because you have good people and you have good customers and you have everybody pulling in the same direction, we kind of got it set up. And then once the dust settled, we're like, okay, let's start running a business, and learned how to have a website, for example, you know, uh, product codes, software. And so I'm just young enough to have kind of grown up with a computer.
Yeah.
I think I was in fifth or sixth grade when I got a computer. And so I also had really bad handwriting. So I typed everything. And so I kind of was early-ish. And so whenever it got into that time where the company needed to grow into that side of things, I was ready for that, I guess. And so that's a little part of the puzzle that I helped with. Um, and so as we got everything settled, then we looked at it. My dad had done a really good job of creating a brand, and so he started working with magazines like Architectural Digest and different ones through the years. Uh, and they would start doing our model houses, and they would want to put our lights on their model houses because our lights were the only ones that are really truly like different.
Yeah.
It's like all the other lights are kind of the same thing, whether you get them from a lighting store, you get them from Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever else. They're all kind of the same, like builder grade type stuff.
Yeah.
And they wanted something a little more unique. And so, of course, whenever you see something on a show house, and that becomes aspirational and yada yada, the brand kind of grew. And so once he had established that brand, then I was like, well, we got a ton of people calling trying to buy lights from us. We don't really have to go through the same supply chain thing. And also, like, we make everything to order, and we have tons of options. Like there's 500 different combinations of lights and brackets and styles. So what we do is kind of unique in that when people call us to buy lights, they think they know what they want, but they typically have no idea what their house wants. And so we try to bridge that gap for people. Well, it's you can't teach third party distribution channels, their salespeople, how to put the correct lights on houses, really, right? It's just too it's a lot of variables, and each house is unique, and each thing is really custom. And it's so the way that we look at it is when people go to buy something, we actually say, wait, hold on, let us talk you through this first and make sure you're buying what's right, because we don't care if you buy the most expensive or the cheapest or the biggest or the smallest. We want what's right for the house. That's all that my salespeople are trained to do. And we don't work on commission for that reason. um, and so we kind of kicked over the supply chain thing early. This is probably 2007. And started selling almost exclusively direct. We do have some great long-term distribution channels that we work with, but I mean, that's because they do it right, and the handful of people that still have those relationships with us. But it allowed us to put more money in our product, more money in our employees, and then be able to keep some of the money as opposed to just spend it all on getting out the door, and more money into your brand. So all that stuff matters as you're trying to create and grow a business. And then as we kept growing it, we would attack this little section of the company that needed to be made more efficient, or just better. And so through the years, what has happened in my little 20-year stint here, which is only 25% of the game, I've seen everybody else. I was actually listening to one of your other podcasts. I don't remember which one it was, where you guys said there's a race to the bottom.
Yep.
And so they're in lighting. It's certainly there's a race to the bottom. And so for us, by incrementally increasing our quality while everybody else is incrementally decreasing their cost, it allows us to just further differentiate ourselves. But then because we sell direct to consumers, then our price points are way closer than they really should be, like from a market standpoint, um, to the lights that we would technically be competing against. And so it's been really simple. And when we go to trade shows and stuff like that, and people see our lights and get to touch and feel them, and we bring a craftsman to our trade shows too.
Very cool.
And so that's where, you're selling made in America, right? That's what we're selling here. But made in America also can become a bumper sticker, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. And and
Absolutely.
and whenever you have a guy who's standing there talking to you about why he's swinging this hammer and setting this hand set copper rivet, you know, it's a different feel than even me telling you about it. Like you're trying to picture it in your head right now. Well, you think of rivets, like we all think of rivet guns, right? Like that's how you make gutters and things like that. No, the literal hammer and a literal rivet set, and you're swinging it to make the rivet squish down to hold the metal together. Like it's that simple, right? And you do that, and like the French quarter light we're talking about earlier has around 100 rivets in it, depending on the configuration. So there's 100 rivets hand set in one light, that we're selling direct to end user with American copper. And so that's why like it's able to just stand out like a sore thumb at a trade show, because nothing else in there is even close to being made in that format, right? Everything else is mass produced. How light can we make it? How cheap can we make it? How fast can we get it out? And for us, it's like, yeah, we want to have a reasonable lead time, want to get it done, but we just want it to be the best. Like that's our guiding light is it the best? Is it the best option? Is there a better way to do it? It's never what's cheaper. That's never the factor.
We touched on a lot there, so I want to break down a couple of things. I think your point about the story of how things are made. That is one of the most impactful pieces of the Made in America buying quality. People want to understand. I think more and more people are craving the understanding of how things are made. Like
Hmm.
they want to understand that, yeah, like this light, it is hand riveted, it is inspected by someone. Like it
Hmm.
is, there's a lot of care, passion, and love put into every single piece that you guys create, and I can tell that. And then the other thing, and I think you touch on it, and it's something that we've heard from the businesses and the leaders that we've talked to, is it's really this shift in consumers. And it is a race to the bottom, as you said, and a lot of my guests have mentioned that it is shifting the consumer mindset and saying, hey, you can go buy this light for $35 from Home Depot. Yes, absolutely. You can go do that. It'll work. It'll be okay. Um, but in 2 years, you're going to go buy a new one. And then 2 years after that, you're going to buy a new one. And then
Yeah.
10 years from now, you would have bought five lights. And then 20 years from now, you would have bought 20 lights.
Yeah.
It's this whole concept of spending more upfront for quality lifetime products. I mean, you have lights that you're talking about made it through Katrina and have been burning continuously, for 60, 70 years. And
Hmm.
the quality is there. And yes, there's a higher upfront cost than going to your local Home Depot and buying a $30 light. Absolutely. But the lifetime value is something that we've really harped on, and a lot of businesses have harped on as well, because you're buying once for the long term. We've heard people. One of our guests made clothings, and they were saying one of the most impactful emails that they get, and they get them quite regularly, is, "Hey, my dad handed me down a piece of your clothing," or "My mom handed me down a
Yeah.
piece of your clothing." And the clothing is 30, 40, 50 years old, and
Right.
if you go to Walmart or Target or Old Navy or
Yeah.
Nordstrom, even, like, you're not buying stuff that's going to last 40 years. You're
No, you
buying.
can't even hand it down to your little brother half the time.
You can't even
No.
get common uses out of it
Hmm.
if you're wearing it. And so I think that's one of the things that we've been trying to educate people about is, and I don't like using the word minimalist, but like there is a form of minimalism in Made in America. Like buy less, higher quality things. And yes, it's more expensive, but you're going to be better off in the long run. And I think you guys are epitomizing that as well in the craftsmanship that you guys are putting into it. You are putting a lot of care into the product that you guys are making, and it's going to last a lifetime. Like you said, you're using the best materials, the best craftsmen, and the
Hmm.
best processes to make a product that's going to be around for someone else's lifetime. My father-in-law always jokes. He's like, "It's not my problem. It's going to be your problem, because I'll be dead by the time
Yeah.
it's there, and it's because it's going to last another 50 years."
All
So
right.
it's a very cool sentiment. So
Yeah,
appreciate.
my dad always used to say that it costs money to be cheap, you know, and especially in the gaslighting side of things, which is about it's less than half of our business, a little bit less than half of our business now. We sell more electric, but gas is still kind of what we're known for. But in the gaslight side of things, like the knockoff gaslight is not, it's like 10% less money. It's not like 80% less money. And then it's like our gas lights are burning a third as much gas. So so it's like if our gas lights are running $7 or $8 a month in gas consumption, that means the ones that you're saving $50 on are burning 25. You're like, okay, that's good, but 3 months from now, you've
Exactly.
broken even. The rest of eternity, the light will pay for itself. So it's even actually cheaper to buy our stuff. So not only is it better, does it look better, does it operate better, do you not have to replace it and all the other fun stuff, but it's literally cheaper, for a homeowner. And so it's almost, I mean, I won't say 100%, but it is the vast majority of homeowners and architects and builders that we talk to, that we actually get a chance to communicate with and have them to take a real look at like what your options are. They're going to almost always choose our product, which is cool because we can win in any direction the conversation goes. And that's part of being from South Louisiana. Everything's competitive, everything's win. It's a football state, right? I'm not sure, you're from Georgia, so I'm not sure how you feel about that, but
Uh,
um But anyhow, so if you can win every part of a battle, you're gonna win. And for us, it's like it's like we're trying to create mutually beneficial situations between us and our customers, us and our vendors, us and our employees. Like from a management standpoint, like you really want to have everything be mutually beneficial. That makes it easy to win for everybody.
Absolutely. That's such a great concept and a way philosophy to be driving the business forward. Win at everything. And as you said, all you have to do now is get in front of people because you do have 10 ways to go to make the sale.
Hmm.
Uh, and I don't mean that in an over salesy way. It's the product. You do want to save money in the long term. Is it the quality? What's important to them? And you guys have all that pinned down. I want to focus, Chris. We touched on it earlier. Some of the challenges that you guys have had that have propelled the business forward. It's one of the things that people are most interested about. I think those
Hmm.
challenging moments are defining. They help you discover who you truly are as a business and as a leader. Could you walk us through one or two of the most challenging periods of time that have propelled Bravello forward to where it is today? Based on your experience.
So, I mean, probably a similar answer for a lot of people, but COVID was a very interesting um, moment, in time, and I try to think of it kind of like a snapshot because it all blends together,
Yeah.
the COVID time. But for us, we had trouble with the materials that we could get. So for whatever reason, the copper demand went up while we couldn't manufacture stuff, right? And so I'm sure like we get a lot of our copper from Revere, right? Revere's the to my knowledge the oldest manufacturing company in the U.S. The Revere is in like Paul Revere, right? That set of puppies. And so they have to make sheet copper for roofing, right, or for flashing, whatever. They're making tons and tons of 16-ounce sheet copper, right? So that's like your highest volume, um, copper used in the architectural world. So what we use is that we use a thicker sheet, so our lights are a little more durable, and then we also use like some deep draw copper, which is a very nuanced thing that we use to spin stuff out of. So even like our finials are all hand spun. Um, well, they didn't have time to stop making their 16-ounce sheets to start making anything else, basically, right?
Yeah.
And so just getting material was very tough. And then you multiply that by the fact that, you're under these kind of new regulations where, oh, well, you can only have this many people in this many square feet and this many hours. And so now you're trying to work split shifts and everything else. And so you're having your demand for your product go up, our sales go up. At the same time, you're having new hurdles and new obstacles to overcome to output to keep up. And so, we had typically always run, say 2 to 4 week lead time was kind of where we like to be our sweet spot. And it got to the point where, we had pushed out to like 12 weeks. And, you know, once you open up the flow again, right, which was 18 months later,
Yeah.
I will asterisk this also by saying we had two hurricanes hit us in this time period. Lose a week of power at one of your two production facilities or one of your two main production facilities, and then all of a sudden you're another week behind. But anyhow, when you're an actual manufacturing company that makes stuff by hand, you can't leave a machine running longer. You can't. You have to have human beings physically at work working more than demand to make up lead time. And so what a lot of people don't understand is if you're at a 12-week lead time, you can't fix it in 8 weeks to get it to 4. To get 1 week down in lead time, you have to be 10% higher than input for 10 consecutive weeks,
Yeah.
right? To knock 1 week off your lead time, now you're at 11, right? And so just math. This is just basic math, right? But it's not, hey, work hard an extra week to knock out a week. It's work hard an extra 10 weeks to knock out 1 week, and then you have to do that 8 times in a row. Well, we're talking about 80 weeks, right? And that's if everything goes perfect, which of course nothing,
Right, right, Chris. It always goes perfect.
everything's perfect. Anyway, so like that was an interesting obstacle for us, and I touched earlier on, when I first got here coming out of college, we had a similar like tough lead time situation, and that was caused by some other uncontrollable variables. And and so, the one thing that's kind of pulled us out of both times is that we got a bunch of people that are here that are very good human beings that care about our company, that care about their company, right? And they want to pull us through together, right? And so everybody willing to grab the rope, has always been what pulls us out of it. It's not any sort of brilliant management scheme, which, you know, it's no, like, hey guys, let's get in this and work together. And I remember, one of the hurricanes that hit down here we were out of power and everything else, but we at the time just happened to have kind of a backlog in one section of our company that doesn't really require power. So we got the doors up, and I'm out there with a few of the guys, and we're just sitting there oxidizing lights, and we probably sat there for 3 days just oxidizing lights. So when the power came back on, we had a little bit of a head start, and we were able to. So instead of losing 3 days, we lost 2.5, right? And those 4 hours of extra, work coming out is just 4 less that you have to make up. And so it's always been, getting in the muck together, working through problems, and then having good people that are willing to help. And we have wonderful people that work with us.
And Chris, I think you touch on it. It is the human factor specifically for you guys compared to a lot of other manufacturers that we talk to, who do have, I wouldn't say a high level of automation and machines that are doing the work, but there is more of that, it seems, than what you guys are doing. What does the workforce look like for you guys? You know, how are you actively cultivating the future workforce in a very skilled trade? I mean, it's not like you can go find a guy on the street and be like, "Hey, I need you to hand rivet
Yeah.
lights."
Hey, Mr. Coppersmith. Yeah, there are none. Yeah,
It's not a growing trade, I would say. So what do you do? How are you cultivating that? We hear it a lot here in where we are in the North Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina region, where one of the biggest issues that textile manufacturers have is finding people who know how to manufacture textiles. So do all that stuff. It's no one's being taught that anymore. So what are you guys doing to combat that and really cultivate and develop a workforce for not next year, but 10 years from now?
yeah. So step one, don't lose the people you have. So
For sure.
you have to take care of your people, and give them a good workplace where they can feel plugged into a place. They know that they're a part of something that is all working together. So they work for the guy standing next to them, or the girl sitting across at the desk. Like they're in it together. So that's step one, is don't have a faucet on, right? When you lose people, that's the hardest thing, because it takes a long time to train people. So now, to go to the new people coming in, typically what you're doing is the same process that we all took. And I say we all, meaning like everybody in the company, right? So as I came up, my first job was packing boxes, right? And we literally didn't even have a packing machine at the time, and I crumpled newspaper and throw it in a box, right? I happen to be a savant at this, right? At crumpling newspaper. And so I remember being, a teenager. Like I was probably 13. This is back in the Uncle Jimmy days.
Wow.
As I'd sit on Saturdays when I was with my dad that weekend. It would be half of my weekend was with my dad at work, and so I would pack boxes. And then whenever I would work here in high school, I would oxidize lights. And then I learned how to use an actual packing machine, which was a lot faster. It still takes some time, but then you learn how to oxidize lights, and then you learn how to glass and pack, and then you learn how to put the brackets on, and the gas jets and the electric sockets, and then you might work in a parts department, and then you might move over into the building, and you have to learn your way up, right? And so for us, it's you start from maybe an easier job to learn, and then once we have people in long enough to know that, hey, they're trustworthy, they're going to be here, they want to be here, they're motivated, then you push them into the next segment of the company, and then they work their way up that way. So it's a bottom up like fill situation, and that's really the only way we can do it, because like you said, there's not. My dad would always call it, you can't really look for coppersmiths in the yellow pages, right? It's true. There's not, and honestly, there's I think two times that I remember in my life hiring people that actually knew what a rivet set even was.
Yeah.
And one of them worked on helicopters, and one of them was just like a big history nerd who, if he ever watches this, will know exactly who he is, and I love him. But the people that like actually knew what a rivet set was. So normally people come in and it's like you're just trying to find good people that want to work and want to have a career, right? And then once you have those people, you bring them along, and then you take care of them so you don't lose them.
I love it. Finding the culture fit and making sure that they want to be there, vibe with the organization, are good people. And then you guys can train them up however you want to, and they can be versatile. And I think you can speak to this, or I think it's just assumed, it makes you more nimble. If someone does leave, or someone is out, or something happens, you have 10 people who can jump in and are willing to jump in and do anything that is needed. And it goes to your model as well. You guys are moved away from the distributor model and to direct to consumer. It allows you to have better margins, and you can
Hmm.
then take care of your people and make sure that you have them around,
Yeah.
because it's not something easy to find. Well, Chris, I want to transition here. Everybody has a couple of those moments where you just are so thrilled, so happy with what you're doing. I mean, entrepreneurship can be hard. You've talked about some of the hard moments that you guys have had at Ravello Lighting, specifically for you over the past 20 years. What are a couple of those moments where it's like, this is why I do what I do? It carries you through those moments where it's like, this is horrible. Like, we're battling 12-week lead
Yeah.
time. I feel like I don't even know what I'm doing anymore because I'm grinding so hard. But what are a couple of those moments where it's like, I'm going to get through this because this is why I do what I do?
For me, it's probably a little cheesy, but it's more about the employee that you grew up with,
Mm-hmm.
and then us having kids in high school together, and us
Mm-hmm.
having, hey, oh, it's graduation time, and you being able to send a graduation present to a kid who was
Yep.
born while their parents worked with you, in whatever 2006,
Yep.
and so every year at our Christmas party, what we do is we acknowledge everybody who hits a 5-year marker, right, with a different sort of reward. And each one of those has its own like special thing. So it's like the people that hit 5 years are like, cool, they're in it. Then the people that are 10, you're like, oh, they're lifers. And then 15, you're like, man, they've been here a long time. And 20, and you're like, they're family. Like, and some of them are, feel like family a lot before that. But like, somebody's been with you for 20 years. Like, they're literally, you spent more time with them than you did your sister. Like quite literally. So it's cool to me that you have these relationships with people, and that you're able to see guys and girls that have been able to create families on their own because of the work you did together, right? And they're able to provide for their families, and get them through school and pay for their house. And I remember, it used to be, man, it's rent's tough right now. Me and one of my coworkers are living together, and now they're like, God, have you seen fence prices? I'm trying to put a new fence on my house, and it's just, that's such a different conversation, but it's the same conversation with the same people, just 20 years apart. You know, and to me, that's what keeps you going. That's what makes you motivated to keep trying to get better, and trying to keep moving the company forward. It's the people. It's not, it's the product is cool. I love our product. We have a very unique product. Very few people get to say they make the best thing in the world of what they make, right? And I think I can say that with a lot of confidence because I've had other companies come and tell me that, right? Like guys that own other companies being like, "You guys are the gold standard," and thank you. You probably shouldn't tell your competition that, but I appreciate it.
Rookie.
Um, that's great, and I love that, and I think that is the tool we use to have successful families and successful friendships and successful relationships, and that's really what matters, and that's what keeps, I think, most of us going. I think there's been times where I've had, people get offered other jobs, and that happens, and that's how it works, and they come and they're like, I don't want to leave my family. I don't want to leave this community, you know, and that's cool, and that's the part that's, now that we've got 80 employees, it's different, than it was when there was six of us eating a box of crawfish in the driveway. Our seafood fest, which is in 3 weeks, right? We'll have 200 plus people there, right?
Really?
It'll be almost every employee that's not out of town for something, and then their husband or wife and their kids, and that is probably the most obvious moment of, hey, this is working, is because you see just kids everywhere, and they're running around. There's a water slide, and there's games and all kinds of stuff, and when you see kids running around, and you know that you're a little part of why they're able to smile or be safe or have food and have a house. Like, the fact that we can keep it going for all of us is really it.
A big weight on your shoulder, but I can tell you are so passionate about the community that you guys have built, and it's probably because of the humble beginnings, from your great grandfather, and then to Uncle Jimmy, and then to your dad, and as you have kind of taken over, you guys have clearly kept that sense of family and community. I think this is a good time to just jump back real quick. So we talked about you're based in New Orleans.
Mhm.
You've said you have two facilities. Where are they? Like, give us a
So
picture
there's
of.
really three. So we actually still in the French Quarter, right? In the
Yeah.
French Quarter on Conti Street is where we have been since 1970-ish, right?
Wow.
In that building, and we still make lights there, right? Originally expanded out of the French Quarter in just right across the river, what's called the West Bank down here, in Harvey, and that's our second biggest facility now. And then in Covington, which is just north of the lake, which is where I'm at right now, is our larger campus for manufacturing. Because the French Quarter you can't ship out of. You only have so many square feet. You can only get so much. But we always want to be building lights in the French Quarter, and then right around the block we have a few stores on Royal Street. Royal Street is the shopping block, if you will. So Bourbon Street's the drinking block, Royal Street's the shopping block, and there's wonderful stores with tons of history up and down Royal Street, beautiful antiques and art, and you name it. It's a fantastic place to be. That's where you should go when you're a tourist, is Royal Street, in my opinion. Um, at least during the day.
Yeah.
At night, if you want to go to Bourbon, that's your prerogative. Um, but uh, but we keep one craftsman building lights at Royal Street in a shop there, for the same reason I do it at the trade shows, right? I want to see lights being built. I want customers to know that it's not just on a wall. It's real stuff. And so that's always one of those places. Matter of fact, this is I'll put this in there. At the Super Bowl week, we had Adam Sandler sneak in the back through the alley, and he sat there and talked to our craftsman that was working that day. And of course, big highlight for Dominic. Shout out to Dominic. But he got to hang out with Adam Sandler and he was in there for like 15 minutes, and he was like, "This is so cool." But that's how a lot of people feel, is they're like, "Oh, this is a real thing. Like, something's getting built, you know." And so it's cool. So that's it. So we have a few storefronts, but basically three manufacturing facilities, um, and kind of spread out to where you have to go physically. Where you can find workforce, where you can find just square footage. It would be a whole lot easier to run a company if it was all in one building, but that's not the hand we were dealt.
No, and I think you mentioned just keeping a craftsman there on Royal Street. Um, I'm assuming can Adam Sandler snuck in the back, and is it something that the everyday
Yeah,
shopper? Yeah, so it brings back a sense of nostalgia too. I'm
yeah,
sure seeing someone actually create something and then being able to see the product that they're creating, you can really connect the two together and
yeah.
see the process.
So the building on Royal Street cuts through to an alley, and
Okay.
so the alley has businesses on it as well. But the alley is where the shop like opens up to, and so the if you come in from Royal, it's 41 gas lights on a wall, very very just like, here's what we sell. It's not it's not very, doesn't feel like a store. It feels more like a museum.
Yeah.
Um, and then if you walk through the little courtyard and into the shop, then you would see the craftsman there. But he came in through the exchange alley, which is probably trying to stay off the beaten path so he could act like a normal human. Because I know me being the kid of the born in the 80s, the 90s and early 2000s Adam Sandler movies were like that's what I eat for breakfast,
I grew up on those. Some of the best memories I have with my dad watching all those. All right, Chris, I want to transition here as we begin to wrap up. We've talked about gas lighting, electric lighting. We've talked about your direct to consumer. You've also said you go to some trade shows, and what I'm getting at here is what is the mix of products that you're selling? Like how much is gas, how much is electric, and then the second part of that is other than direct to consumer, how are you getting your name out there to the everyday person who's building a house, who is
Yeah,
renovating a house? I mentioned that we just built a house. There's lots of Googling that can go on, but it's challenging. There's so many brands out there. So how are you guys?
for sure.
How are you getting in front of people? Are you going to the builders directly? What does that look like?
So, okay, so our advertising is just like everything else we do, very old school, right? We do a lot of print advertising still, and it's very helpful for us to maintain a brand. So in the architecture world, in the building world, if somebody's looking for the kind of level of house that we typically sell to, they're looking for a different type of light than what you can get at ABC Lighting, right? Um, so that has been established from doing all that. Like I said, Garden and Gun, Flower Magazine. There's tons of V Magazine. There's a lot of them that we do advertise and do their model houses for, right? Um, then you also have like your web presence. We do obviously do online marketing as well. We have a pretty solid social media presence that we've done almost 100% in house. We have a wonderful um, person that's really grown that over the last really 10 years from almost nothing into a significant following. And we're lucky to have just a ton of phenomenal content from build. I mean, some of the houses we work on are just completely aspirational, the nicest houses in the country. And when those people are okay with sharing them, we put them on our Instagram or whatever it is. It's like, oh, I want that. And so that's part of it. The other part of it is, when a builder uses our lights, okay, they work. And why does that matter? Well, builders don't want to get callbacks, right? That's one of the biggest things with builders. They don't want to get callbacks. They want things that are going to work. And we also make it easy for them. Like I was telling you earlier, what our sales process is: someone, architect, builder, designer, homeowner, emails us an elevation, and we say, here's what your house wants. Right, here's where to put your gas line. Here's where to put your electric line. Here's the style, size. Here's when it's going to ship out to you. We'll side market. So that way, the people that are used to working with us, especially like the professionals, the architects and builders, they almost don't even have any input on the lights at this point. They just shoot it over to their sales rep who has been working for us for 24 years, right? And they go, I trust this person. And this person comes back and says, here's what you need. And they go, thank you. Here's the check. We get them built, shipped out, and it's a drive-through window. You know, it's a simple transaction. Now for the homeowner, that they're doing it once, they want to be more involved, but they know even less about what they need, right? So for them, it's a little more, hey, here's some pictures of houses that have a similar like architectural style to yours. Here's the lights that we've used before that match that architecture, right? And so that makes the consumer more comfortable with. They don't know that we know what we're talking about, right? They don't want to assume that we're experts. We are. Our sales team is phenomenal, and they have to go through a pretty rigorous training process before we allow them to recommend lights. But when we recommend lights to your house, there's no like restocking fee or anything if they're wrong. Which the good news is that we aren't, so I don't have to cover that very often. Um, but on the occasion that something that if we were to screw up a lighting recommendation, we take care of it. Like we're gonna fix that because we don't make mistakes. It's not what we do. So our lighting design team is similar to, you can't find a coppersmith. You also can't find somebody who knows Bevolo light fixtures through and through and how those apply to architecture and homes, right? So even that is a long, painstaking process.
Absolutely, and it sounds like it's very consultative, right?
Yep.
And with the homeowners, you're giving examples, being there for the questions, and helping to guide them through the process. And then for the builders and architects, as you said, they just want easy. and you guys deliver easy consistency, high quality products that work. I'm sure they're relatively easy to install too,
Yeah.
compared to some other things. So that's great to hear, and I think it just shows the passion again that you guys are putting into everything that you guys do. Chris, want to talk what's next? You guys have been around for 4 generations now. Sounds like you're continuing to go strong. New Orleans is a place full of determined people, gritty people, and I think you embody that. What's next for Bevolo Lighting? What's on the future for you guys? Is it continuing to innovate on new products? Is it expanding to different product lines, or is it just continuing to grind in and be the best at what you guys are doing?
Yeah. So first and foremost, be the best at what you do. That's, and I think I hit on that earlier, but you always want to be great at what you're known for. But what we know is that there's not new styles of architecture being developed every 5 years. It's pretty rare that a brand new style of architecture. That's what you see. Oh, it's a Georgian home or whatever else. Like that's not from yesterday, right?
Yeah.
So having the style light fixtures that are appropriate for the architectures that are still being drawn, we've got that under control, right? We got 500 different combinations of lights and brackets and sizes and styles and things like that. Now, on the occasion that a custom light comes through, which we do custom lights all the time, and I mean custom, not made to order, like real custom. If something is, hey, that is a new thing that needs to be applied to multiple homes in the future, we'll add it to the line, and that's how we've always done that. Now, as far as the technology side of things go, with light bulbs switching over to LED, or as those tend to change, and they finally seems like it's starting to settle down a little bit. But you'd have new light bulb technology, like drastically new light bulb technology every 30 minutes for like 10 years, right? Well, for us, it's no big deal because we don't make light bulbs. We make fixtures to hold the bulbs, right? And so as long as we can continue to make fixtures that will last as long as the bulbs, because again, going back to your analogy earlier, in 2 years you got to replace the fixture. Well, the fixture starts, the finish starts to come off, and the bulb is a 10-year bulb, but then you just throw it away with the fixture. Well, it wasn't a 10-year bulb; it was a 2-year bulb, you know. So really, the technology is pretty easy for us because we're still making a lifetime product that can go whatever. Now, when we're doing street lights and things like that for developments, normally we'll just adjust. Again, the lantern is already, we can figure that part out pretty easily. But just using whatever sort of technology that their particular code asks for, or whatever, is really pretty simple for us because we're just installing a different type of technology. Like the streetlights in the French Quarter, for example, right? They 4 or 5 years ago switched to doing LEDs, and we made those fixtures so that they would have like an insert panel, so it just kind of drops in to the top of the light fixture, and they change it out. So all the fixtures that we make that have been there for 30, 40 years, the ones that have been there for 10 years, whatever, like they're all made the same way, they all look the same, they just have different technology in them, and they can update the technology as opposed to having to replace the whole fixture, right? So it's actually a lot more sustainable if you're looking at it from a kind of, eco-friendly situation. You're taking a 300-year metal and you put it in a situation that's going to last as long as all of our lifetime. That's a pretty sustainable way of doing stuff.
Absolutely. Chris, you touch on something that I want to understand. Do you guys do a lot of like work for larger developments? And
Sure.
like,
I mean, it's pretty common. It just depends on if we get in the conversation with the developer early enough. Um, Almost always, if we talk to them when they're in the planning stage, we'll get that deal. The thing that we'll run into the headaches with are some municipal guidelines, if you will, are like, you have to use this light fixture because we picked it out 32 years ago, and every light in the city. So but whenever we have the opportunity to kind of get into it, we do, but we're certainly more residential is our sweet spot, but we do hotels and restaurants, and there's all that stuff as well.
for sure. No, very cool. And that's it's always, I love the lights. Growing up I grew up in Chicago,
Okay.
in Evanston, which is just north of Chicago, where Northwestern University is, and
Mhm.
we had very striking black lampposts all throughout the city, and I always love them, and it's something that always catches my eye. Anytime I go into a new town, it's one of the first things I see. So
Yeah,
cool.
they have the unique like vertical glass piece in the middle of those in the top and bottom. 12, there's like 12 panes of glass in them. Yeah, I've had to remake those before too. So yeah,
I love them. They're so interesting to look at and add just something interesting to your eye. Well, Chris, it's been such a cool conversation. I think Bevelo lighting is the best of the best in terms of gas lighting, custom copper light fixtures. I want to talk about some of your favorite other made in the USA products other than Bevelo lighting. I'm sure you have a couple of lights in your house.
yeah,
Uh,
I
but
did. I
what?
got a 3% discount from my dad. It was very nice of him. Yeah. Okay, so quick me history. I sold books door to door
Okay.
in college, which was as good a training as you'll ever get for selling stuff, is trying to sell books after the internet was invented door to door in South Dakota. So
Great.
just
Great.
if you, it's like boot camp for sales. So I've always had kind of a soft spot for the door to door salesman. And so Cutco is one of my favorite American brands. I'm a big fan. I still buy Cutco stuff for like my friend just got married. I sent him a set of Cutco knives. Like it's always been, and I remember in my wedding, I got a set of Cutco knives for one of my dad's friends. And thank you, Richard. And I still use them. You know, they're fantastic. So I'm a big Cutco guy, personally. And I showed you my coffee mug earlier before we got on. But my American coffee mug, which I literally drink out of it every day, and kind of forgot that it was branded so strongly to be American made. But yeah, it's the reality of it is I like American made stuff, you know. And so if I can buy something that's American made and I have that option, that's where I'm going to go.
Absolutely. Well, I am going to announce it to all the Cutco people watching. Go hit up Chris because he is probably one of your best bets
He's a
to
sucker.
go
Yeah,
knock on the door. Everybody loves the Cutco salesman, but to your point, it is one of the best sales training to go and do the door to door sales. Build a lot of character, and you get a lot of doors slammed in your face. So
that's
very
right.
cool, and appreciate you sharing that, Chris. As we wrap up, I want to give you one more opportunity. Just share anything about Bevelo that you want people to take away, what you guys are building down there, and the fantastic work that you guys are doing down in New Orleans.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know that I have a whole lot more to add since I just talked your ear off, but I will say that, you know, as long as I'm here and I'm only 41, I can't remember how old I am, for at least 5 more years, you know, before I retire. But we're always going to put our effort into our product and into our people. And so if you want, you know, it's the best product, and it's remarkably fair priced compared to what you get. Um, and it's straight from a value standpoint. It's very high value, which I think of which I've found personally when I'm buying American made shoes or knives, they last longer, they work better. Um, my mom's got a Cutco knife that she bought from a door-to-door salesman when I was in third grade that she still uses every day. Um, and so that's like that's part of why it probably means a little more to me too, is that I remember that dude, and we couldn't
Yeah,
afford that knife. We could not afford that knife in third grade, but we got that one knife, you know. And so anyway, so I think being able to have something like that and be able to provide a product that has that same kind of feeling to people. And I'm, you know, talking to the lady. I remember I might have been 24 years old, and I was, you know, answering the phone at the time, and I had a lady call, and she bought one 14-inch French quarter light, our smallest, least expensive um, light fixture for her house in Metairie, Louisiana, which is a little suburb of New Orleans, which is an appropriate size for that house. It's an 8 foot ceiling, 6'8" door, you know, and that's what that light was designed for. And she said, "I've been waiting to buy this light for 20 years," and it was like, got it. Like now I get it. Like that was when it clicked for me that like what we're making is important to the people that are buying it, you know. Um, so that's about it. I'll quit running
no,
on.
that's a perfect way to wrap up. Such a cool sentiment that you guys have created and the brand that you guys have fostered over the last 4 generations to have a product that people are going to save up for. And it's, I'm going to not buy something so I can get a Bevolo light. That's very powerful. Well, Chris, really appreciate you taking the time today. It's been such a fascinating conversation learning about Bevolo lighting, and the story and the work that you guys are doing down in New Orleans. Thanks so much, Chris.
Thanks, Ben.